What if nearly everything that you've been told about how to raise your vibration is actually wrong, if not dangerously incomplete? What if the positive thinking, the 432 hertz music, and the gratitude journaling is actually keeping you stuck in the same low vibe prison that you've been trying to escape from? What I'm going to share with you today very well may blow your mind. It can change your life. And for those who stick around to the end, you're going to get three proven methods that you can use to permanently shift your reality starting today. That means you won't have to be chasing after those temporary states like some kind of motivation junkie any longer. Now, some of the things that I'm going to share with you today might challenge some of your beliefs about manifestation and spirituality and personal development. And I understand that not everybody is ready or interested to peer beneath the surface. But for those who are interested in digging a little deeper, let's get started. So it was 1998. I was 19 years old. I had just moved to Los Angeles, California to start a new life, and I became a bona fide spiritual seeker. Meditation, affirmation, gratitude journaling, yoga, you name it, I was doing it. What I didn't realize then was that I was actually getting onto a kind of spiritual hamster wheel. Well, more on that in just a few moments. Well, actually, in 2004, I had what many people would consider to be a kind of profound spiritual awakening. And what happened after that might surprise you because it certainly surprised me. It was not at all what I was expecting. It was 8 years of living hell, anxiety through the roof. I was living panic morning, noon, and night. Eventually, my health collapsed. I was literally dying from the stress of trying to maintain artificial high vibe states. Let me paint a picture of what this looked like at one point. There was a time when I was actually living in a cargo van because I was too anxious to live anywhere else. And I was driving around the country every single day in search of some kind of miracle. What miracle? I didn't know. I just knew I needed one. And every single night I would sleep sitting upright in the driver's seat because I was too anxious to lie down. And I did that for months on end. Now, I'm curious if maybe you can relate to what it is that I'm about to share. I bet you can because I know that I certainly lived it, and many of my clients have also described things that are very similar to this. So you wake up in the morning and perhaps you have a morning routine. You maybe meditate, maybe you do some binaural beats, or maybe you do some breath work, whatever it might be. You get yourself into a pretty good state. You're feeling pretty good. You're feeling confident. Like maybe you finally got this whole thing figured out. Like you're going to have a good day, maybe a good week, maybe a good life. And then you get in your car, perhaps because you're going to go to work or you're going to go to the store or you're going to maybe go visit a friend and you get in traffic. And what happens? Like that, you lose it all. You're stressed, maybe even a little angry, and definitely not feeling all that enlightened. And actually, it's even worse than that because now you're stressed about feeling stressed because, all of them, the manifestation coaches, the spiritual teachers, they've all taught you that like attracts like. And so you're terrified of being in a negative state because you're afraid that if you're in a negative state, you're going to attract negativity towards you. And of course, this is enough to send you into a downward spiral, thinking, what's wrong with me? Why is it that I keep ending up here, even after all the work that I've done? Hey, if this sounds familiar to you, would you please let me know by putting a been there either in the chat or in the comments, just so that I can know if I'm talking to the right crowd? Well, I've got some good news for you, actually. You see, much of what is passing for high vibrational teaching is actually just spiritual materialism. It might feed the ego because your ego wants something to do. It's like, look at me. I can do all of these things. I'm so powerful. I'm so fantastic. And I can have all of these experiences. Aren't I wonderful? But the problem is that actually it's starving your soul. It's actually harmful. And you're going to understand this much more clearly in just a few more minutes. Now, here's another scenario of what this might look like. Maybe you go on a weekend retreat, and it might be a plant medicine retreat. Maybe it's a meditation retreat, whatever it is. and you have some kind of breakthrough experience. And this time you say, this time it's going to be different. This time it's going to last. And so Monday rolls around. And whether it's the traffic or it's a difficult conversation with your partner or maybe some bills that you got in the mail, whatever it is, you find yourself right back where you started. You're right back at square one. And actually, if you tell the truth, it's worse because now you know what you're supposed to feel like because you experienced it during the breakthrough. And the contrast between what you're experiencing in the moment and what you're supposed to experience is really painful. Well, look, I get it. I've been there. Like I explained earlier, I did a lot of that in my life. And I remember in 2002 when I was really gung ho about elevating my consciousness and I was meditating for 3 to 4 hours every single day. I was doing yoga. I was doing intensive breathing practices, the whole 9 yards. And I could definitely get myself into some really great states. I mean, I was feeling really, really high. And it was intoxicating. Now, what I didn't realize then, but it's pretty obvious now, is that I was just chasing after peak experiences. It's not all that different than being a drug addict, if you tell the truth. So then what would happen, of course, is that I would crash. And so my baseline state became increasingly worse because it was characterized by more anxiety, more depression, more guilt, more shame, because I was thinking, what's wrong with me? I mean, I can get into these really high states. Why am I not staying there? And so that was really, really, really painful. Well, as I said, this is actually a trap. This is the spiritual materialism trap. Because the mistake that a lot of us make is that we make an artificial distinction. We think that there's somehow a difference between chasing after cars and money and houses versus chasing after another peak experience. It's actually the same thing disguised as something different. And so this is the problem that many of us are facing. So I want to just briefly switch gears and talk about what is vibration really, and in particular, what is high vibration? Because when you understand this, this can really start to change everything for you. Because there's a really common misunderstanding. So let's just start from the beginning. So what is vibration? Well, actually, everything is vibration. So your thoughts are vibration, your feelings are vibration, everything that you're perceiving with your five senses is vibration. Matter is vibration. It's all vibration. Anything that can be conceived of or perceived is vibration. And one way that you could think of the human nervous system is that it's kind of like a biological radio receiver. And so if you think about a radio receiver, and I think hopefully everybody's had an experience of working with a radio, you tune it to a particular frequency, and then it can receive whatever's broadcast on that frequency. So different radio stations are broadcasting at different frequencies. So if you tune it to that frequency, you're tuning into that station. Make sense so far? Well, the human nervous system can be understood in a similar way in that when you tune the human nervous system to a particular frequency or range of frequencies, then you're going to receive whatever is broadcast on those frequencies. So if you tune your nervous system to the frequencies of love, abundance, kindness, generosity, peace, happiness, joy, freedom, and so forth, then that's what you're going to be perceiving and tuning into. Of course, on the flip side, if you're tuning into the frequencies of lack, scarcity, upset, frustration, disappointment, discouragement, anger, fear, anxiety, and so forth, then that's what you're going to perceive. Makes sense so far, right? And this is kind of basic stuff. But here's where most of the teachings leave it. They just leave it at that. And if you just take that surface level, then you would think, well, gee, then I guess all I should be doing is just tuning my nervous system to those frequencies that I want. Well, there's some truth in that, but as I said at the very beginning, it's dangerously incomplete because there's one major mistake that most of us make, and I'm going to explain what that is right now. Because most of us are attempting to tune in through force of willpower, and it just doesn't work. And the reason that we're doing that, if you really pay close attention, is because you perceive that you need the positive and you need to avoid the negative. Does this resonate at all? Does this make sense? You feel like you need those positive things. You need the love. You need the joy. You need the happiness. You need the freedom. And you feel like you need to avoid the negative. You feel like you need to avoid the fear, the anxiety, the worry, the doubt, the guilt, the shame, the blame, and all the rest of it. And that, my friends, is the problem. It is that sense of need. It is that attachment. And that is what causes the whole problem. Now, I know this might not yet make perfect sense, but hopefully it will if I explain it well. So this need, this attachment is actually coming from a scarcity mindset. It's because you are perceiving that you are lacking something. It's because you're perceiving that something is missing, something's broken, something's not right. And you need to have something to fix it. And you need to keep away those things which endanger your sense of well-being. And that sense of need, that sense of lack itself is actually low vibration. So just let that sink in for a moment. That sense of need, that sense of lack, that attachment is itself low vibration. You cannot escape by using low vibration as your vehicle. And that's the mistake that almost everybody is making. It's the mistake that almost nobody is pointing out. And that's the reason why so many people are suffering in the way that I described at the beginning. On that spiritual hamster wheel, chasing after one experience after the next, thinking maybe the next one is going to be the one that will stick, but it won't stick because of what I've just described. As long as you think you need something in order to be okay, in order to be complete, in order to be safe, in order to be well, you are actually locking yourself into low vibrational states. And here's the kicker. When you are locking yourself into that low vibration state because of the sense of need, lack, scarcity, and so forth, that's actually going to then naturally resonate more with the negative ends of the polarities, which means that your overall baseline is going to be more or less characterized by more of the lower vibrational states, like the fear, the sense of anxiety, worry, doubt, all of those things. Those are going to tend to be what you are going to experience. Of course, you can get yourself into a high state temporarily, but you'll come back down to that one because you are overall operating from that sense of need or lack. Now, when you are conditioned, when your nervous system is conditioned from a sense of need or lack, then that creates stress. And stress is going to alter the function of the nervous system so that you will actually be unable to perceive the options and opportunities that may well be staring you directly in the face, because that is what happens under stress. Your nervous system will narrow things down, shut things down. It's all about survival. Now, in contrast, when you can actually truly achieve a higher vibrational state, not the artificial states where you're just chasing after something temporary, but what I'm going to describe in just a few moments, when you can really achieve a truly higher vibrational state, then what happens is that your nervous system switches into a state of creativity, ease, rest, relaxation, peace. And that allows you to open up to new opportunities, things that you otherwise weren't seeing or perceiving. So hopefully this is making sense to you, right? So the big mistake that almost everybody makes is that they believe that high vibration and what is good is actually to latch on to the positive end of a polarity. And they think that then they need to avoid the negative end. But actually, it doesn't work that way. That just keeps you stuck at the level of polarity. And you cannot avoid the negative if you're stuck at that level. So now let's explore what is the solution to this. So the solution is actually to achieve a truly higher vibrational state. And a truly higher vibrational state is at a different level. It's not at the same level of the polarity, not just trying to cling to one end and push the other end away. That's just endless struggle and strain. But truly higher vibration is a transcendent level that integrates and includes the lower level. So it integrates and includes the polarity. It does not try to exclude it. Trying to exclude is a low vibrational strategy. So please understand that. If you are trying to exclude, that is a low vibrational strategy. That should be a really good clue for you. If you notice that you're trying to exclude, that should help you to remember this is me operating at a low vibration. That can help you to remember to shift to a higher vibration, which is what I'm starting to explain now. So higher vibration actually means transcend and include. The low vibrational strategy is move to positive, exclude negative. Do you see the difference? Does that make sense? So in order to transcend, and this is probably now the question that people have, like, okay, great, I get it. How do I do that now? Let me explain. So I first discovered this in 2012. So you might recall that I described how I had gotten myself into a really bad state. My health was in terrible condition. I actually thought I was near death. And I know that seems kind of dramatic, but it was actually my reality at that time. And I had gotten myself into such a state that I was completely exhausted. I mean, so exhausted that I could barely get out of bed. I could barely put a sentence together. I was really deeply, thoroughly exhausted. Now, up to that time, I had been using that same strategy, that low vibrational strategy of try to cling to the positive, avoid the negative. And I had many compulsions, these rituals that I would do in my own mind a lot of the time, trying to negate what I thought were low vibrational thoughts. So if I would have a low vibrational thought, I would try to negate that using these inner rituals. And so there were a handful of things that really were like my main enemies, and this might seem silly, but they were my main enemies. It was McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and sugar. Walmart too. These were because I associated in my mind these were low vibration and I didn't want to think about them. I didn't want to be associated with them. I only wanted high vibrational stuff in my life. So anytime I would think about those things, anytime I would see something, I would try to negate that using these rituals. Well, in 2012, there came this point that I described where I was so exhausted that one day I just couldn't do it. Now, it's possible that I could have mustered it, but what really happened is I was so exhausted and I just realized I just don't want to do this anymore. This is not working. This is killing me. I have to do something different. And I did something different. I chose to allow it. I chose to allow everything, all of it, everything that I've been trying to avoid, all of the fears, all of the anxiety, all of the discomfort, all of it, all of the mental images, all of the negative fantasies, all of it, anything and everything that was there underneath the surface that I had been desperately trying to avoid and run from, I chose just to allow it completely. And as I did, something miraculous started to happen. I discovered in that experience that I had been doing this completely wrong. That I in that moment I realized on some level that I had been on that kind of spiritual hamster wheel and that that was the real cause of my suffering. And by simply allowing it, I began to shift to this transcendent state, transcend and include. I wasn't trying to push it away. It was in fact because I wasn't trying to push it away. And something really paradoxical occurred. At least it seemed paradoxical based on my old paradigm. See, the old paradigm, again, was I need to have only the good. I need to keep the bad away. I need the desirable. I need to keep away the undesirable. I need I need the safe. I need the unsafe to be kept away at all times. But in this experience of allowing, what was revealed to me was that in the efforts that I had been making, I was actually harming myself. And that in allowing, there was a revelation of the real peace, the real happiness, the real freedom that I'd actually been looking for all along. See, what I had been chasing after, the peace, freedom, happiness, joy, safety, and all the rest of it that I thought I was looking for, that I'd been chasing after and clinging to, was actually it was a distortion, or it was not quite right. It was not the reality, not the totality of the reality of peace, freedom, happiness, joy, true higher vibration. Because true higher vibration, as I've said, is transcendent and includes. It's not effortful, it's actually effortless. It's natural. It's actually who you are. And so anytime that you're making effort, that effort is looking in the wrong direction. So when I discovered this, I knew that I basically discovered gold, so to speak. And so I was blessed to have been able to recognize it for what it was and to begin to make use of that. So that was how I discovered this for myself. So in just a moment, I'm going to share with you these three methods that I promised at the beginning that you can use so that you can have this kind of experience for yourself on a regular basis. And when you do, not only is this going to end the war within yourself so that you're no longer causing yourself this misery and torment any longer, but actually you're going to find that more effortlessly than ever before, you're going to be able to connect to the truth of what it is that you've always wanted, the truth of peace, the truth of happiness, the truth of fulfillment, the truth of abundance. And as you do, naturally what starts to happen is that your nervous system is tuned to those higher vibrational frequencies. So naturally, without trying, you will find that you are experiencing those things that are aligned with those higher vibrational states. So your outer world will reflect that inner reality, not because of the all of the effort that you used to put in with the robotic affirmations and the gratitude journals and all the rest. I'm not saying that you have to give all that stuff up, although most of it you would be better off giving up. I'm not saying all of it is necessarily bad, although a lot of it is problematic inherently. Some of it is actually fine, a minority of it. But you don't have to be doing most of those things. You don't have to be doing any of those things. And when you actually allow yourself to connect to the reality of this higher vibrational state, then that will become clearer and clearer to you. And your life can become uh, a reflection of that. So if that sounds good to you, then I'm going to share those methods with you in just a moment. Before we get to that, I have a something here. So I'm going to read it off my screen. I have a little assessment that I'd like to give you that can just help you to get clearer on whether or not you are actually suffering from that false definition of high vibration that I talked about earlier, which is chasing after the positive, trying to avoid the negative. So this is just some questions, and these are just for you to reflect upon. So the first one is, how do I believe I need to become, rather, what do I believe I need to become or achieve before I can truly be happy or at peace? So what do I believe I need to become or achieve before I can be truly happy or at peace? So just notice if there are any conditions you think you need to become or achieve something. Number two, how do I react when life doesn't match my mental picture of how it should unfold? Is there stress, fear, anxiety, anger? Three, what aspects of my personality or life do I hide from others because they don't fit my spiritual or positive self-image? So if you're making effort trying to put on a false front, just notice what that's coming from. Number four, how do I treat thoughts or feelings that don't align with my desired spiritual or personal development goals? Is that stressful for you if you have thoughts that are not aligned? Do you feel like you have to do something with them, fight with them, struggle with them? Five, what happens to my self-esteem when I'm not performing well or meeting my own standards? Six, how much of my spiritual or personal development practice is motivated by trying to escape something versus genuine curiosity and growth? That's a really important one. I'll read it again. How much of my spiritual or personal development practice is motivated by trying to escape something versus genuine curiosity and growth? And number seven, How comfortable am I with not knowing what's going to happen next or having everything figured out? So those are just some questions for reflection as a self-assessment. Because if you think about it, I mean, all of those are pointing to ways in which you might be tormenting yourself because you're working so hard trying to be perfect, trying to achieve something, trying to avoid something, trying to project something, trying to get approval, trying to get validation. And when you actually achieve a higher vibration, when you really achieve what's truly high vibration, then much of that just starts to fall away naturally. So let's explore now these three methods that I promised. So the now I should say that for some of you who've been around before, some of these will be familiar to you, and some of them may be new to you. And whether they're familiar to you or new to you, this is a very useful review or introduction to all of these. Because these three methods that I'm going to share with you today are, in my opinion, are three of the most powerful methods that if you were to use only one, I would recommend you use only one of these. Any one of these can radically transform your life permanently in a very positive way so that you can experience more ease, more peace, more harmony, more freedom day to day. And that can start immediately. I'm not saying that immediately you're going to have some kind of magical, mystical transformation and it's all going to be rainbows and roses, but I am saying that the changes can start immediately. So the first of these methods is let's see if I can remember them. I have notes so I can help remind myself. Ah, yes. So the first of the methods is the active relaxation method. So some of you might recall this because I talked about this several weeks ago. And I'll on YouTube, I'll post a link to that video in the description and pinned comment, or at least in the description, so that people who watch this on YouTube can easily find that video for a more in-depth conversation of this method. This method is a method that came to me when, in that moment that I described, in with the that moment of exhaustion in 2012 that I described, where I realized I needed another way. It wasn't going to work any longer the way that I was doing it. It was just time for a real change, and it had to be a radical change. And it was in that I realized that a really big part of what was causing the problem was that I was focusing on the thoughts of the problem. I was focusing on the negative fantasies, the mental images, and the memories that I associated with the problem. Now, of course, I was feeling the problem, no question about that, but my attention primarily was on trying to solve the problem by focusing on the thoughts and the mental images. And in that discovery, what I realized was that there, underneath it all, there was tension. And what I realized was that if I didn't have that tension, then I was pretty sure I wouldn't have a problem, even if those thoughts and mental images were there. So what I just said is, for me, it was a complete life-changing realization. So I really recommend that you just consider what I said. I'll repeat it because I think it's really important. What I realized was that the problem was primarily that I was focused on trying to solve the problem by thinking about it and by focusing on the mental images. So the memories and negative fantasies, negative projections into the future. So thinking about it and mental imagery about it. And I noticed that underneath all of that was tension. So I was feeling tension, but my attention was on the thoughts and the mental imagery. And I realized that if I didn't have that tension, then I was pretty sure I wouldn't have a problem, even if I had the thoughts and the mental images. So just try that out for yourself for a moment. I mean, just notice any problem that you might think you have, big, small, medium, whatever it might be, and whether it's present right now or it's one that you can remember having had, or even one that you could imagine having. Any one of those will work. Just notice as a little kind of thought experiment. If just imagine, what if you didn't have any tension? What if you were completely at ease physically? Would you have the problem? Even if the thoughts were there, even if the mental images were there, if you were not reacting to any of that with tension, would there be a problem? And I believe, I believe that you would probably discover what I discovered, which is there probably wouldn't be a problem. So next, based on that realization, what I began to experiment with was shifting my attention away from the thoughts and the mental images, and instead shifting my attention to the physical sensations. So that was the first step. First step was to shift the attention. So I described in the video that I did about this, I described three steps for this process. The first one is pause. And that's what this process is that I'm describing right now, is that step of shifting attention is to pause and then shift attention. So just to pause because there's a momentum to the agitation about the problem, just to pause and then shift away from the thoughts and the mental images and instead notice the physical sensations. That's step one. Step two is and from here on out, steps two and three, they're just three steps, uh, are really all about keeping the attention away from the thoughts and the mental images because there's such a habit. There's a momentum to that. The habit is to go back to that, but that's actually what's feeding the problem. So step two is to scan the physical sensations in some way, whatever way makes sense to you. I usually do it head to toe. You can do it whatever way makes sense to you, but it's just to scan gently, just to notice what's there, just to notice the sensations. So that's the second step. And then the third step is to release. So the three steps are pause, scan, release. And how long do you do this? As long as it's useful, right? I mean, if you stop and then your attention just goes right back to thinking about the problem, agitating the problem, then that would be a pretty good indication that it would be useful for you to repeat the process and stay with it a little longer. At a certain point, you'll cease to have the problem. So then, therefore, your mind won't go back to the thoughts or the mental images. Or even if it did, it would quickly abandon that because it would no longer be of any interest, because it wouldn't stimulate any kind of agitation or problem. So I'll guide you through it once briefly now. So, and by the way, you can use this process not only when you perceive that you have a problem, you can do it anytime. Because actually, if you pay attention, a lot of the time, most of us are habituated to problems. A lot of the time, our mind is just going to problems. So um, you could just do this all day and your life would be better. So, so step one, pause. Shift attention to the physical sensations. So just shift your attention to physical sensations. So if your attention was on thoughts or whatever else, just shift your attention to physical sensations. And then we're going to scan and I'll guide that from head to toe. And we do steps two and three in tandem together. So just bring your attention to the top of the head and just notice whatever you notice there. And if there's anything that you can easily release, then do so. And if you don't know how to release anything, then that's perfectly fine. So you just release whatever is obvious and easy to release. And if there's nothing that you know how to obviously and easily release, then that's perfectly fine. Next, notice the ears. And if there's anything that you can become aware of that you can easily release and obviously release, then do so. And if not, don't worry about it. Next, notice the cheeks. And if there's anything that you can obviously and easily release, then do so. And if not, then don't worry about it. Next, bring your attention to the jaw. Notice if there's anything that you can obviously and easily release. And if so, then do so. And if not, then that's perfectly fine. Next, bring your attention to the throat. If there's anything that you can obviously and easily release, then do so. The neck, if there's anything that you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Shoulders, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. The arms, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Wrists, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Hands and fingers, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Chest, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Upper back, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Belly, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Lower back, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. Pelvic floor, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, do so. Buttocks, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, do so. Thighs, if you can obviously and easily release, then do. Lower legs, if you can obviously and easily release, then do. And the feet and toes, if there's anything you can obviously and easily release, then do so. This time I'll guide it. I'll guide it one more time, and this time I'll just name the part of the body, and you can know that you just gently bring your attention there and notice if there's anything you can obviously and easily release. And if you do, if so, do so just to the extent that it's easy and obvious to do, and nothing more than that. And it's going to be a little bit faster this time. And that's part of how this should be, because it should be light and easy. It's not about being perfect. It's not about achieving absolute perfect relaxation. If that happens, that's nice, but that's not the aim. This is about helping to recalibrate so that you can actually start to be at peace rather than perceiving that you have problems. So, top of the head, ears, cheeks, jaw, throat, neck, shoulders, arms, wrists, hands and fingers, chest, upper back, belly, lower back, pelvic floor, buttocks, thighs, lower legs, feet, and toes. So that's the active relaxation method. And I recommend that this is what I would recommend is the the go-to method. Anytime that you find that you are stressed, worried, having a problem, agitated, angry, upset, then just do this much. Because if you notice, this doesn't require that you analyze anything. So it doesn't require that your prefrontal cortex is functioning well, right? This is very, very accessible. And so I think that it is an excellent process because it's so accessible, it's so simple, and it's very, very effective as long as you use it. Obviously, if you don't use it, you can't get the benefits. So that's the active relaxation method. That's method one. Second method that I'm going to share with you also may be familiar to those of you who've been here lately because this is the SLIPS method, SLIPS. So SLIPS is an acronym. It stands for the three steps of this process. So SL stands for sense of lack. That's the first step, is to notice anytime you have a problem, to just notice that actually underneath all of the thoughts about the problem, the mental images, the projections, the he said, she said, and all the rest of it, there is actually just a sense of lack. There's a sense that something's wrong, something's missing, something's deficient. So it's just to tune into that and just notice that that's what's actually underneath all of this. Step two is IP in the SLIPS acronym, and that is inner process. So this is to bring your attention to the inner process that you're using, which agitates the problem. You see, a lot of the time we think that the problem is just happening, and that's because it's automatic. It's happening unconsciously. And unconscious processes happen really fast. So in order to make it conscious, what's necessary is to slow it down. I have consistently gotten feedback from people that with this process, becoming aware of the inner process initially is the hardest thing for them. And the reason why is because they haven't slowed down enough. Once you slow it down enough, becoming aware of the inner process is very easy. So if you're having the sense that you're not able to become aware of that process, then just slow it down. Now, I'll give you more details on how to do this in just a moment. I'll guide you through the process with a specific problem so this can become clearer to you. Right now, I'm just giving you an overview. And then S is the last part of the acronym is stands for stop. So the third step is stop, which means really it just means to inhibit the indulgence of the inner process. So by becoming, it should actually be inherent in becoming aware of the inner process. It should automatically stop. If you're sufficiently aware, it will automatically stop. But just to make it explicit, you want to continue to bring that awareness in such a way that it automatically stops. So I'll guide you through this process now so you can experience it. So select any problem that you have experienced in recent times. So it could be maybe today, yesterday, maybe it's happening right now, some problem. So it could be, somebody said something to you and you got upset about it. It could be that you have some kind of financial stress. It could be whatever it is, something, anything at all that you have perceived as a problem. And we're going to use this process. So first step is sense of lack. So just notice that underneath any thoughts that you might have about this, there's actually a sense of lack, a sense that something's off, something's wrong, something needs to be fixed, something's not right. And actually, if you were to go even deeper, you might realize that this is not, that it's actually just energy. It doesn't actually have any meaning at all, but it's just a habit of perceiving it as a sense of lack. Now, the second step is to become aware of the inner process. So that's IP, inner process. So notice that if you can go back to, I mean, if the problem's happening right now, then you can become aware of the inner process that's occurring right now. If this was a problem that happened in the past, then in your mind, go back just before that problem started for you, just before you began to experience the problem. And like you're watching a movie, begin to play that forward very, very slowly so that you can become aware of the exact moment at which you began to experience the problem. And continue to slow it down so that you can then become aware of exactly what it is that you have done internally to create the sense of the problem. So somebody mentioned they have a headache. So I'm not talking about the, the sensations themselves are not a problem. I'm talking about the sense that you have a problem, and there's a process by which you generate that. And it involves some kind of thoughts, some kind of perhaps mental images, and some kind of inner activity, such as tension. So you just want to become aware of that. So this is particularly clear, I think, if it's a problem that happened in the past, because then you can recognize that if you go back, there was a point at which you didn't have the problem. And if you play it forward slowly, you can pinpoint the exact moment in which you began to experience the problem. And then just notice internally, there's a process by which you are generating that problem. So you're thinking something, believing something, expecting something. You're reacting to it internally with tension, which feeds into this spiral, this vicious cycle. And the more awareness you bring, you should notice that it stops on its own simply because you are shining that light of awareness on it. If you don't find that that's the case, then you could use the active relaxation method at this point. So you've become aware of the process, and then you could just use the active relaxation method in order to continue to maintain that non-engagement with the habit of creating the problem. So that's the slips method. And the slips method obviously involves a little bit of requires your prefrontal cortex, right? There's a little bit of analysis that has to be done. And so this is a very, very powerful process. Oh, I should tell you how I came to discover this process. So I don't have some kind of eureka moment of discovery for this, but it started to dawn within me starting around the year 2020. Now, as most of you know, 2020 was an interesting year for many people, but it was interesting for me in a different way because I found myself uh, just sitting. And it wasn't something that I was trying to do, but it was just something that was happening. I was doing the bare minimum just to provide money and take care of my family. And other than that, for the most part, I would find myself just sitting in silence. It wasn't, like I said, I wasn't meditating. I wasn't reading. I wasn't watching YouTube. It was just happening. And I wasn't, I was, I was not depressed. Uh, I was not ecstatic. I was just sort of neutral. It's just this thing that was happening. It's very challenging to describe because it was nothing. And this actually went on for several years. And in that silence, what emerged was growing awareness of these inner processes that were still often running within me. These inner processes of, beliefs, expectations, thoughts, and so forth. And through that awareness, I realized that so so just to put a timeline on this, so like I said, 2012 is when I discovered this active relaxation method, which I had been using ever since then because it totally changed my life, absolutely transformed my life completely. Um, and that became automatic. I don't think about it. It just is happens automatically now. And so that was the case by 2020. Um, and so my life had very much transformed in so many ways. And I suspect, although I really don't know, that active relaxation is sufficient in order to give complete results. But what I found was that when I discovered this SLIPS method in 2020, thereabouts, was that there were still these subtle inner processes that I hadn't previously become aware of, and that by shining the light of awareness on them consciously allowed for a release of those patterns, which otherwise I don't know how long they would have played out. So this SLIPS method seems to go, it's like a laser. You shine that laser on the cause of the problem, the subtle inner cause of the problem, the subtle inner habits of perception, belief, and so forth, and it releases. So it's very powerful and very rapid for releasing these things that uh, even though I suspect active relaxation could do eventually, it happens faster using the SLIPS method. So that's why I share it. So now, uh, third method that I want to share with you. And this is a method that will be familiar to some of you, although uh, you probably don't. I came up with a name for it. I have to read my paper because it's a new name. Oh yeah. So I'm calling this the rapid resolution method because I think it's useful if it has a name. Otherwise, it's difficult to talk about. But some of you will be familiar with this because this is a method that I taught in the Living Fearlessly course. So this is so when I refer to this as the rapid resolution method, it's the same, it's that's the name that I'm giving to this process now. So this is a method that I also discovered in 2012. So around the same time as I discovered the active relaxation method, I also discovered this rapid resolution method. And it kind of was born out of the same realizations, discoveries. But with this rapid resolution method, there were two things that I discovered that allowed me to more rapidly release certain patterns. So uh, the first of them was that um, in so let me take a step back. So the active relaxation method is about shifting the attention away from the thinking about the problem and the mental images of the problem. But with the rapid resolution method, we also can temporarily, consciously put attention on the thoughts and the mental images about the problem in a very specific way with a particular uh, relationship with that that can give, as the name suggests, rapid resolution. So with the rapid resolution method, what we do is we select a problem, one that's recurring, and then consciously put attention on whatever is most agitating about that problem. Because the insight that I had was that I had been trying to avoid those things, right? So I had been trying to move away from those things. I had been trying to move away from whatever it was that most agitated that problem for me, whatever those thoughts and mental images were. I was always trying to avoid them, and that made the problem worse. So I had this insight. Well, what happens if instead I consciously move toward them instead of trying to move away? So that's the first insight that I had that gave rise to this rapid resolution method. The second insight was that trying to sustain that kind of attention where I was actively moving toward the things that previously I had tried to avoid, trying to sustain that for a long period of time was stressful. So you might hear people talk about, being with their feelings, for example, right? So people will have feelings that they have resistance to, the fear, anxiety, worry, whatever it is, they have resistance to that, and then they'll have this idea that they should be with their feelings. So they try to just sit and be with those unwanted feelings. And oftentimes they're trying to do that for a long time. So they've got kind of the right idea, which is instead of trying to avoid, be with, be open, be receptive, move toward. But trying to sustain that for a long time, I found was not sustainable because it was stressful. And so the second insight that I had was that doing this in just very, very short intervals, just for a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and then doing many iterations gives very rapid results. So it looks like this. So the first step is to select some kind of problem. And then the second step is to give that to notice whatever it is about that problem that is most troublesome for you, and give that a rating, a subjective rating from 0 to 10, in terms of how intense that is or how unpleasant that is for you. And the reason for giving that subjective rating is that over time we want to bring that down to 0 with this process. So this gives us a way of subjectively measuring that. Then you want to consciously choose to put your attention on those aspects of the problem that are most disturbing to you in a way in which you are completely receptive and open to them. So not trying in any way to avoid them. And of course, this is the most challenging part for most people because the habit is to try and avoid. But that's why we only do this for a second or up to 5 seconds. But we don't want to try to do this for a long time. It's just for a few seconds. You want to consciously put your attention on those things and be receptive and open to them, whatever they are. the feelings, the sensations, the images, the thoughts, whatever it might be. Then you want to just completely drop it and shift your attention away to something else. So by shifting your attention to something else, you make this much faster and easier. So you want to just you can do active relaxation, right? That would work. Or you could just look around and count colors or shapes, right? You could just like, how many green things do I see? How many rectangles do I see? Yes, or state birds, exactly. Or some kind of, yes, like trivia, or you could just count backward, like from 10 to 1. And then you repeat the same process. And each time that you do it, what you're doing is releasing the the emotional charge that you've attached to that whole thing, to the whole problem. And sometimes sometimes you'll do a round and then you'll do a second round and then the charge will actually be higher. Maybe at first it was a 5 out of 10. And then the second round it's like a 9 out of 10. And that's perfectly normal. It won't always happen, but if it does happen, you shouldn't be disturbed by it. All that means is that there were layers that previously you didn't feel safe to acknowledge that now you're acknowledging, and that means you can release them. So you just continue with the same process. You just simply give attention to those things, allow them completely, just be open and receptive. Don't try to avoid anything, just for a few seconds. And then you just drop it and shift attention away to something else. That's the short version of it. There's a more in-depth version of it, but I'm not going to try to give that here. So that's the rapid resolution method. Now, the rapid resolution method is probably one of the most challenging for some people to do on their own because a lot of times people don't feel safe to be willing to allow those aspects of their experience in that way. So it can often be really helpful to have somebody who has experience to coach or guide you through that process, at least initially, so that you can have some experience with that. But with that said, many people can have great success with that without needing any other support with it. So I'm providing those instructions because for those who can make good use of it, it's really, really powerful. I use that in conjunction with the active relaxation method to free myself of so many perceived problems that I used to have, so many fears and anxieties. And so I really highly recommend it. So those are the three methods that I wanted to share with you. And when you use these three methods, actually, when you use any one of these three methods on a consistent basis, your life will change. You will achieve a higher vibrational state, and it will be a permanent change because it won't be the old way of just trying to cling to one end of the polarity while avoiding the other. You will actually have shifted to a higher vibrational state, which is inclusive, which is why it can be permanent because it's not trying to keep something else away. It's inclusive of everything. So when you work with any one of these on a consistent basis, this can give you life-changing results. Now, of course, there might be a few obstacles for people. I want to take just a few moments to go over those so that you don't have to have you don't need to allow those obstacles to block you from having success. So I think probably the biggest obstacle that many people will have is that they'll say, well, gee, three is too many things. I don't even know where to begin. And I guess in some way, it might have been more skillful for me to only have given you one method today. I certainly could have done that, but I wanted this to be more complete. I wanted this to be a complete lesson. I didn't want to leave something out. And I wanted to make sure that you had all of the options available to you because some people will be more inclined toward one and some people toward another. And I want to make sure that you have those options available to you. So I acknowledge that, like I said, it could have in some ways been more skillful if I'd only given you one, because then you wouldn't have been faced with this dilemma of choice. And I understand dilemma of choice is a real thing. And unfortunately, that keeps many people holding themselves back from experiencing real benefits in their lives because they just stay stuck not making the choice. So I want to make that easier for you and just say, look, just choose one. So you have three options. Just choose one and commit now to working with that for at least 30 days every day. And if, not if, when you do that, I give you a guarantee your life will change for the better. And so start there. Choose one and work with that for 30 days. Now, after 30 days, evaluate and decide, are you completely satisfied with that? Is that giving you everything that you had hoped for? If so, fabulous. Why would you need anything else then, right? You have everything. It's giving you everything. You don't need anything else. If after 30 days you say, that's pretty good, but I'm still struggling with these other things in my life, then try, don't just drop that because it's giving you results, but try another one of these methods just to see what that gives you. So commit to that one for 30 days at that point. Does this make sense? If you try, if you just stay stuck because you have this dilemma of choice, you say, I don't know, it's too many to choose from. I don't know. And then you say, well, I'll feel better if I just go watch another YouTube video, right? Or I'll feel better if I just, go eat a snack. Or I'll feel better if I go watch a movie, right? So you're putting it off, but what that really means is that you're just not going to follow through. So instead of doing that, just choose one now. Just choose one, any one of them, whichever one appeals to you. And if you're not sure, then I'll make it easier for you. Just choose active relaxation because anyone can do that. It's definitely accessible to anybody. You don't have to, there's no analysis involved. You don't have to go into difficult feelings. You just use active relaxation. It gives you instantaneous benefits, and those benefits just grow over time. So if you're in doubt, just choose that one. Um, so another obstacle that some people might have, and I hope it's not any of you, but just in case it is, another obstacle that some people might have is to say, well, seems too easy to really work. I mean, active relaxation, what on earth is that going to do for me? You might say, I've tried relaxing before and that didn't change anything for me. I've gotten massages before and that didn't really seem to change anything. But the thing is, this is different. And don't be deceived and think that simple means it can't work. Plenty of very complicated things don't work. So complicated doesn't equal it works, and simple doesn't equal it doesn't work. It's just a matter of does it work or not. So simple is not really relevant. And the fact of the matter is that when you work, as I've said repeatedly, with any one of these methods consistently, you will definitely get the results. So they do work. Don't let yourself be deceived by the idea that it's too simple to work. And by the way, if you're, how do I say this? So here's what I'll say. So for those who are here live, you're here live, obviously. Many people are going to watch this on YouTube. So I'm going to just speak to people as though you're watching this on YouTube. This post in the comments, come back here on YouTube and post in the comments with your experiences. Post in the comments with your questions. Post in the comments with your successes. And this applies to everybody who's here live too. Once this is on YouTube, find it on YouTube and come back and use it as a hub. Use the comments as a hub, as a community so that people can get the support. Because if you have questions, chances are somebody else has questions. So I'm going to answer the questions that people post in the comments. Post, as I said, also post your victories, your successes. Because why? That's going to help other people to know that it can work. Right? This is really important because otherwise people are just going to have to take my word for it. But if you post your results, other people will see that it works, and that's going to inspire them to also put it into action for themselves so that they can also get the results. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So use the YouTube video as a hub so you can get your questions answered. This is for anybody. because I want you to succeed with this. So if you have questions, doubts, concerns, post them there so that I can help you. It will help everybody. So make use of that. Let me just also say this. Consider for a moment, because I know sometimes people say, well, but it sounds like it's easy on the one hand, but it sounds hard on the other hand because it's going to involve me having to do something different. Look, I get it, but think for a moment about the cost of not changing. I mean, like I was in 2012 when I realized that I literally could not continue to do things the way that I had been doing things because it was going to kill me. Now, hopefully things are not that dire for you. Don't let them get that dire. So just think now about the cost of not changing. Think about the cost of continuing to do things the way that you have been doing. If you keep putting things off, if you just watch the videos and you say, "Well, that's interesting," right? You can gather up that information, but if you don't apply it, then it's just entertainment and that's just a distraction. So don't let yourself do that to yourself. Instead, make the commitment to your future self to get the results, to make the change that you've been longing for because it's available to you. You really can shift to a higher vibrational state permanently when you apply what it is that I've shared with you today. And when you do, you will see very positive changes. So just project that into the future. Imagine what it would be like 6 months from now if you just kept doing things the way you've been doing things up to now without making any changes, without applying any of these methods. And just notice, is that what you want for yourself? And then imagine 6 months from now, the you who has followed through, committed to this for 6 months, what's possible? Can you just imagine for a moment what that might be like? The greater peace, the greater clarity, the greater ease in your life, the greater joy and freedom that you can be experiencing when you're no longer trying to avoid aspects of your own experience. That's all available to you when you make the choice. So it's really up to you. And I encourage you to make that choice. Don't let another day, another week, another month go by just gathering information instead of putting it into practice. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And one final thing that I want to say before we wrap this up today is that I've also produced some additional resources to support you in applying this and in getting total results in your life. So I recommend that you check those out. So the first one is the book that I've written called How to Be the Creator of Your Reality. That you can get your own digital copy of that for free on my website at joeylott.com. I'll provide the link to that in the description on YouTube and also in the pinned comment on YouTube. I think everybody who's here live has already received that. If you've received it but you haven't read it, read it. Many people tell me that they're actually reading it every day, at least parts of it every day, and that it makes a big difference in their life. So, you could consider that. It's very complementary to what it is that I've shared today. It's also possible that when you read that, that might bring up some questions for you. It might challenge some of how you've understood what it is that I've shared today. And so that would be a great opportunity for you to ask questions about that too, so that you can get answers to those things. And the other thing that I want to mention is that I also offer programs so that those who are interested in taking this even further and getting my support and getting results in their lives um, have that opportunity. And you can get more information about those programs by clicking the links that I'll leave in the description and the pinned comment on YouTube. So that's what I wanted to say today. And for those who are live, we'll stay on for the group coaching. For everybody who watches this on YouTube, blessings to you and bye for now.